This is Dr. Crystal Ellerson, and this video we're going to walk through designing a resume. I often have students ask, hey, can I just turn in a resume that I've already created? The answer to that question is always no, because I want you to learn to use features in Microsoft Word, and so we are combining different things right now. So you're going to go through and learn about the program while we're creating the resume. We're going to learn about setting up the normal style, the appropriate fonts and sizes to use, setting up your overall document design, what sections are required in a resume, and what sections are optional. So let's get to setting this up. The very first thing that we want to do is set up our style for the document. We worry about the document design early so we don't have to go back and change things later. So first, I always go and I turn on my paragraph marks. That way I know what font I'm in. And I have a page break in here that comes from working on a different video. So I need to get rid of everything, so I have a blank document. Now, in my blank document, I want to set up my fonts and I want to set up colors. So we're going to start with the font. You want a body font for most of the text in your document. We'll get to headings in a minute, but you're going to want a body font. You want a serif body font, and a serif is a really old word for feet. Okay, it is these little lines that you see on the bottom of words or letters. So if I go to Times New Roman, which is a good body font, and I type up, uh, you'll end up putting your first name and your last name. Okay, so you type your first name and your last name here. Notice at the bottom of the text, there are these little lines, the bottom of the Y, at the top of the L, at the top and bottom of the N. Okay, those are serifs, and they make it easier for people to read. Now, we don't usually use them for headings. We use them just for body text. We use a different type of font called sans serif for headings. But right now, we're just setting up our body text. So once you've put in, type your first and last name, and you have chosen your font, and good fonts for the body are Times New Roman, um, Georgia. If you don't have a whole lot to put on your resume, Georgia is a good one to go with because it is physically larger than Times New Roman, even at size 12. Now, if you have a lot of stuff to put on your resume, Garamond may be a good choice, okay, because it is physically smaller, even at size 12, and so you can fit more things on a page. Now, size 12 is the smallest and largest you should go for everything except your name, but we'll get to that in a minute. Once you've chosen your font and you've chosen the font size, we want to work with the font spacing. And so we can go in and we can click on the drop down here and choose line spacing options. And we want to set it to single space, and you want the after and the before set to 0. So make sure to change those. This is how you get true single spacing in the document. Just choosing singles not enough. You have to make sure you've set the before and after spacing. Once you've done that, if you stay highlighted on the text, you can go up to this word normal here in what we call the styles drawer. And if you are on a PC, you just right click and choose update normal to match selection. Now, all of the text in the entire document will automatically be set to the font you chose, the size you chose, and the spacing you chose. Now, another way to do this is to click on the drop down here and you can choose to create a style. You can clear your formatting and start from scratch. You can go in and choose to modify the normal instead of just updating it, and you can choose things more directly. One important thing in here is that you keep it called normal, and that the style for the following paragraph always needs to be in the same thing, which is normal. You can set the color. It can be automatic, but you could just set it to black as well, which is standard for resumes. We usually want the body text to be in black. It could be in a very dark gray. I wouldn't go with any other colors than that for a resume. Then you click OK. We have our style applied. So that's going to be what we want for our body text. The sections that you have to have, we'll get to headings in a minute, but the sections you have to have your name, and then you have to have contact information. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my actual name here. And then contact information, you don't want to necessarily give out your home address. Used to, that was standard, but with people being able to search on the internet, you want to avoid being stalked. You wait until you're asked directly, like you're filling out paperwork for the human resources, before you give out that information. So here you could just put the city that you live in. So, if you lived in Dallas, okay, Texas, and you could leave it like that. Okay, you wouldn't have to give them any more information than that. Choose how you want to abbreviate the state if you're going to abbreviate. You can spell it out or you can do the abbreviation capital letters. Do not do a lowercase x or a lowercase second letter in the abbreviation. That doesn't stand for anything. Okay, you also want to give an email address. Usually it needs to be a professional email address. Your TTU or school email address will work until you get on the job market. You could also, as long as it's some combination of your first and last name, at gmail.com, at Yahoo, at pretty much anywhere, um, that's fine. You want to avoid putting the year you graduated or the year you were born or your birthday in your email address. The reason for that is that can date you. And so sometimes people will think you're too young for a job or they might think you're too old for a job. So be careful on that. The other thing that you will need to put in is a link to your LinkedIn profile. That's what people will ask for next, so that's what we would want to have there. And so it will be linkedin.com/, and then we will have in, and then some combination of your name. Usually it's your name and there'll be some numbers after it. Then you hit enter, and we should end up having a LinkedIn link. You may want me to do the www here. There we go. That is all the contact information you have to include. If you're going to put a copy of your resume on the internet, that is all the contact information you should include. Wait until you are contacted by someone or that you contact someone before giving out phone number, home address. And the home address really should wait until you actually have the job. Phone number you might have to do earlier because you may have a phone interview. All right, other sections that have to be in here: summary, education, experience. Every other section is optional. We'll talk about the other sections, but just for now, those are optional. Now, you do not want to have your headings in all caps. We use upper and lowercase. And you don't want to have them in the same font or the same color as your body text. So we need to decide on what our design color is going to be. I'm going to pick a sans serif font. That's without the little feet heading. One option is Calibri. That's a good heading font. Another one is Aptos. That's a good heading font. Helvetica works. Tahoma works very well. Arial works very well. So any of those would be fine. I'm going to go ahead and go with Arial. Usually we want to add some emphasis, so we'll go with bold. And then your name should be larger than anything else on the page. You want them to notice it. You want them to pay attention to it. You should not center your name. People read English from left to right, top to bottom. So where they look first is the upper left-hand corner of the page. So that's where you want your name to be. Now, 18, 20 is probably better. Somewhere between 20 and 24 is a good size. I'm going to go with 22. And then we want to pick our design color. Our design color needs to be a muted color. It should not be a bright color. So bad colors to choose for a resume, because resumes are very conservative documents. Anything in the yellow or orange range, too bright. Okay. Purple usually does not work very well. Okay. And like pinks do not work very well. Often people want to go with their school colors. If you go with the school color, do not choose the bright red, choose the darker red. We want a muted color. The most common color people go with, and the number one favorite color in the world, is blue. Blue is good if you don't know what else to do. Go with blue. That's a good choice. Avoid the darkest navy blue. We need enough contrast between the body text color and the heading color to be able to easily see the difference, and navy blue is too close to black. So go with a brighter blue, okay? But don't go powder blue. That's too bright. Remember, very conservative document. You could also choose company colors. You would want to change them for every job that you applied to. So, if I was going for UPS, I would end up going into more colors and hunting for a brown that was close to their color. If I was applying to the University of Texas at Arlington, I might actually use orange a little bit, but I'd stay with blue in other cases. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and go with blue because it's the most standard, and I'm going with a very standard blue. Once I've chosen that color, that's my color. That means that my email address needs to be in that color as well. And I also should turn off underline. I want the links to work, so all I do is I double click the underline button, and that makes the underline go away. I've also made sure that this blue for these links match. If you had chosen red, okay, then you would want to make sure that you choose red for your links here. Now, the summary should be bold. It should be in your design color, and it should be in your sans serif heading, which I chose as Arial. You would do the same thing for the word education and for the word experience. Now, again, you might have Tahoma instead for your heading, or Calibri. That's okay, as long as it is a sans serif font. Notice that the sans serif fonts are blocky. You see the bottom of the letter L there? It does not have those little feet, whereas down here, the bottom of the letter L does. Or if you look at the E in Ellerson, okay, it's very blocky, whereas the E down here in my email address in my name has those little feet. That's the difference between serif and sans serif. Serif speeds up reading, or there's about a 10% reading speed difference between this. So you want most of it in your body font, but we want to slow people down for the headings. All of the text except for your name should be in size 12. Now at this point, we need to figure out how you want to lay out your document. There are certain rules that we have to follow, but we want to have an overall unification of your design. So I'm going to zoom out. And you're going to double click at the top or the bottom of the document so you can get into a different layer of the document. This is the header footer layer. You'll see these little dots come up, the dashed lines across the top and the bottom. It'll say header and footer. If we want part of our page design or page numbers to show up on every page, we want to go in and put them in here. That way they're always in the same space on the page, and they show up over and over. So first we're going to go down to the footer, and we're going to put in page numbers. On the header footer menu, which appears when you're in the header footer, on the left-hand side you will have page number. Click on the drop-down, and what you want is to put your page number at the bottom of the page and on the right-hand side. People read from left to right, top to bottom. The last place they look is the bottom right-hand corner. So this is where the page number is going to go. Also, this is where you would put like contact information if you were in advertising. Now that's not where it goes here. Now I like for a resume to tell them how many pages are there. And so I tend to use the page 1 of 1, page 2 of 1 of 3, that type thing. We really shouldn't go over 2 pages, but that's what I tend to do for my page numbers. Also, you should type your name down there. Okay, so Crystal Ellerson's resume. That way, if somebody prints, and you'll put a space after that. That way, if somebody prints a copy of your resume, and a page is missing, they know. And they know that it's yours because your name only appears on the first page unless you put it down in this footer. If you have an extra paragraph mark below that and it's pushing your footer up some, you can hit backspace to move that down. The font and size of your page number, the font should match your heading font. So whatever font you chose for your heading, your design font, it should be the same. So it's going to be a sans serif font. In my case, I chose Arial. Page numbers are smaller than the rest of the text. Make it size 10. Now at this point, we want to think about our overall page design. How is it going to look overall? Now I'm going to remove the paragraph marks. I'm just turning them off. And I want to add a shape to this page so I can unify my page. So I go to the Insert menu, and I'm going to pick a shape. I'm going to show you a couple of different options. Choose what works best for you. I'm going to start with a rectangle. Rectangle is very simple. I will draw my rectangle across the top, and I'm in the header footer. And I'm going to make this look however it is I want it to look. So the shape could be different. It could have had a wave in it, could have been a circle, but the color has to match my design color. So if I went with blue, then I would go make sure that I did the matching blue. But in this case, I went with dark red, so I'm going to choose dark red. My body text color is going to be black. So I can set an outline. I'm on the Shape Format menu, which only appears when you're selected on the shape. I changed Shape Fill to the red. And then Shape Outline, I'm going to make sure it's black. And I can make it thicker. So I would go back to Shape Outline, and your box might be smaller. It might be up to the right. Just look for the drop down. And you can go to Weight. And I often will change it all the way up to 6 when it comes to my page design. And so I now have a much thicker border here. I can copy this image, just a standard Control-C, or I can go up here and click Copy, and I can come down to the bottom where the footer is, make sure that you're not highlighted on the page number, and then paste in the box. You can move it around so you can get it underneath your page number. That's fine. Or if you want it to be behind the page number, you can make it bigger. And while you're selected on the shape, if you go into Shape Format, you have the option to send behind text on the drop-down. So you look for Send Backwards, and you choose Send Behind Text, and then your page number would appear. At this point, you have document design set up. We've unified our document. We do not have a border on all 4 sides. We don't want a border on all 4 sides. People tend to look at that as trapped white space. It makes them less comfortable when reading. Something else you could do if you wanted to, since the rest of the page is white, you could come down here and you could change the color of the text to white to make it stand out more if you put your banner behind. Now, when I double click into the center of the page, I'm now no longer in the header and footer. My red faded. That's okay. When you print, it'll be the same darkness as this. If you send it out as a PDF, it will be the same darkness. It's just reminding you that it's in a different layer. Okay? So this is one option for how you could lay out your page, and it would be a very good design right now. Another design option, I'm going to turn this back to black. You could, instead of drawing your rectangle across the top and the bottom, you could choose just the top or just the bottom, although it tends to look better when there's both there or where you choose the top but not the bottom. But you could also put this down the side. Don't get it too close to your text. We want to have some white space here because we want to make it feel comfortable and easy to read. And so at least, a quarter of an inch away. And this would also work well for your document design. Another possibility is that we could make this larger so your headings fit over on top of this. Now, what we would have to do is change the color of the headings, and we would have to work with your name, and we would also have to change a little bit about the shape. The outline couldn't be there the way it is. We might even set it where it had no outline in that case. Now, at this point, what I would probably end up doing is okay. I would move this in just a little more, and so it would split between my name. And I might even add an extra space between my first and last name to make the division a little more obvious. When I double click out of it, I would go and I would change my headings to white to make sure that they stood out. Otherwise, it'd be the same red. And I would change my first name. Otherwise, I could simply indent over. And I might decide how far I want that indent to go. So hang on a minute. If I wanted to, I could actually just highlight these 3 lines and manually drag over. Or I could go to the Layout tab and I could increase and make the choice of how far over I want them to go. So if I decided 1.2 was what I wanted, I might add, like I said, an extra space just to make sure that my name aligned with it. And I would ignore it once. And I might make my name bigger or something to help deal with that problem. In this case, I now have, and my underline came back, so I'd have to go back and get rid of that underline and turn this red again. I now have another possible design that could work very well. Choose the design that works well for you. Another way that I could lay out, especially if I'm trying to get everything on one page, is I could insert a text box, and I just choose Draw Text Box. Put my text box up here. This would allow me to move my contact information up here. Now, if I did that, I would not want the indent that I have, so I would have to get rid of that indent. So it's back on the Layout tab, and I would just get rid of this. And this would be one of the few occasions where we would actually have right align. So we would right align our contact information in the box, and we would work very hard to make sure to align the text with our name. Something always has to be aligned with something else. And so I would align it with my name, the bottom of the text here with the bottom of my name, and as far to the right as the page number goes, I would not want the text to go any further than that. One way of figuring that out is to turn on the grid lines and see if I'm outside the grid lines. I am outside the grid lines, so I'm going to move the text in. I do not have to keep this square around here, so I would go to Shape Format for my text box, and where it says Shape Outline, I would just set it to No Outline, and then we don't see it. So we have lots of different options for how we could lay out the page. Choose which one works best for you. I am going to move my banner to the top again. And notice that I'm overdrawing the banner. I've made it too big for the page. We want that because I don't want to be able to see the white above or on the left or the right when it's up at the top like this. And so I just pasted it, I copied and pasted, and I'm just dragging it down to the bottom again. Eh. And I'm just choosing to send behind the text so my page numbers show up. Like I said, I would switch that to white. This is just about unifying the design itself, and it does make a difference. Okay, so now I'm back in the main document. I'm going to go ahead and turn my name back to red, and I'm also going to turn all the headings back to red too. Get rid of that extra space because I no longer need it. And I'm going to go ahead and keep the contact information in the upper right, but it was fine to have it right underneath here. Sometimes people like to have the contact information all on the same line, and so they would do it this way. They would do it Dallas, Texas, and then tab, tab, and then they would put in then we tab and tab again, and we'd get our LinkedIn on there. Now, you would not want to have the link for the LinkedIn to wrap, and we don't want to shorten the link. Let me get rid of this weird indent that came in. Not sure. There we go. I'm going to turn the paragraph marks back on. Those little arrows are indicating when I tabbed. Sometimes that's not going to work perfectly, and so what we'll have to do is manually space things out. And so I would end up just hitting the space bar until I got this all the way over to the end of the line. Once it wrapped, I would hit backspace one time to get that there. And then I'd have to go and fix the rest of it. But you could have this way, okay, on that line, and then you would only have enter one time between. I'm going to take that out because I have mine in the text box up there. Make sure that your body text lines are set to normal so we get the right font and color. And now you have to decide how you want to align things for the page. There are a couple ways of doing this. One, we can just tab over and start writing, okay? So I would highlight this right here and make sure it was set to normal. And I'd start writing whatever my text was going to be, okay? Once I get to a second line, because you're going to have about 3 or 4 lines in your summary, that will be a separate video. I'm not going to show you how to complete the summary right now. We're just showing you how to set it up. But let's say that you have text. You're applying for a job, okay? You've responded to your job ad that you found or internship ad that you found, and you've used keywords from that, and now we're just trying to format it. What you would want to make sure you did was we would have the hanging indent. So you could click on line spacing options on the home ribbon, paragraph box, line spacing options, and you could go to special in the indentation section, which is in the middle, and choose hanging, and then decide how far over you want it to go. A ½ inch of hanging would take it right here. If you have the ruler turned on, 1 inch would work better. So I would move this over to an inch. So it says 1 inch right there, and click OK. And now we have good alignment going right here. We would want to make sure that we had the same indent for everything else that we put in here. Okay, this is one way to do this. Another way is to have the text start on the line underneath and all the way over to the left. This one is not as good because we want white space. We want the headings to stand out. And so it is better to have even just a little bit of an indent, okay, instead of having the entire thing all aligned on the left. So this would be another way to set it up. I'm going to go back to the one that I had here. You only want 1 paragraph mark between each section. When you have 2, we have spacing problems. For the education section, you start with the school you're currently attending. And so for most of us, that's going to be Texas Tech University, because that's where I'm teaching right now. You want to give the city and the state. Make sure that if you abbreviate it above, you abbreviate the same way down here. And if you did not abbreviate, that you spell it out the same way. Go ahead and bold the name of the school. On the next line down, put the name of your degree, the full name of your degree. Okay, don't abbreviate. So it's going to be Bachelor of Arts, Science, General Studies. It's going to be one of those. Pick whichever one it is. I'm going to do arts. In, and then you're going to put your major. In my case, the actual name of the department is English. And so I might have my Bachelor of Arts will be in English, but my concentration is technical communication. That would be a way of putting that information in there. You'll want to tab over and have the word anticipated. A colon, and then when you think you're going to graduate. No one's going to hold you to this, just, when you think you will. So it's going to be either May, August, or December. Those are the only times we have graduations. And then the year. So let's say 2026, 2027. You want the date to be out far on the right and easy to find. Space over until it wraps to a second line, backspace one time, and then you are aligned perfectly on the right-hand side. You can also check it by going to the View tab and turning on the grid lines to make sure that you have gone all the way over. Technically, okay, so we would want to italicize the name of your degree, which is going to change the spacing up a little bit, so you may have to add another tab to get it over there. You may have to go back. Technically, this is all you need. You don't have to list anything else. However, there are other things that you could list. And there are a couple other ways you could do this. Just make sure that that you are consistent. One, you could move the date up a line like this. And then we would have to tab over, space over, and okay, it's aligned. This might give you room if you need to add other things, like let's say you are graduating magna cum laude. Now, if you're not, obviously you don't have to have that, but this would give you room for that. Or maybe your degree name is extremely long for some reason. It's Bachelor of General Studies, and then when you list the 3 areas of concentration, you've wrapped to another line. Just make sure that when you wrap, you indent. You use a hanging indent each time. So if we keep going, just like we did with the summary, but we would indent the second line a little further. So let's say I kept going for whatever reason. I could just hit enter at the end of the previous line and tab over and just make sure I go one further. Now that's if it wrapped. It doesn't for most people, but just in case. Now, if your minor will help you with the internship or job that you are applying for, then list it. If it does not help you, then don't list it. It's up to you. This is optional. How you would list it would be this way. Minor. And mine was Russian. However, I am not fluent. I'm better at reading it. So I don't put my minor on anything because somebody might expect me to be able to speak Russian, and I cannot. So I wouldn't have that there. But that's up to you if you think it will help you. Another optional thing is GPA. If you choose to include your GPA, you put GPA colon, and then you have to put whatever it is. If it is below a 3.2, don't put it out there. It just doesn't look good for you. But let's say it was a 3.2 or higher, you'd put 3.2 forward slash 4.0. It's because different schools have different GPA systems. The 4.0 system is not the only system out there. Sometimes instead of putting your whole GPA, you would rather just give the GPA for your major. You can do that by putting the word major in front of it. But that's not actually required. Okay, these are optional lines. Now, if you went to a previous school, such and you got a junior college, and you got a degree from that school, you would list it. If all you did was take foundational classes and then you transferred to Texas Tech, you would not list the junior college. There's no point in listing it. You only list the degrees you finished or the one you're currently working on. But let's say you did get a degree from a junior college. Let's say it was Tarrant County College. And you went to the Fort Worth campus. We always give the city and state. Now, if we put the date on the top line up here, we have to put the date on the same line here. Make sure first to bold, and then tab over. Now, this time you would not have the word anticipated because you already have the degree. So let's say you got it in May 2024. Okay. We still are going to tab all the way over and then space over to make sure that our dates are in alignment on the right. And when I turn off paragraph marks, you can see how those stand out. And you can see how the headings stand out. We want this white space. We want it to be consistent. So the next line, again, you would put the name of your degree. Associate of Arts in English. Okay. There really isn't a minor. You might have a GPA. It's rare that you have a minor at a junior college. That's, I mean, possible, but if you want to put your GPA, again, you would do it the same way. Nothing below a 3.2. We do want to make sure that we italicize. Now, it is possible that you were part of a dual degree program from your high school. You could put that in here, okay? Dual degree program. That's how you would do it. Very simple. Now, normally, once you have a degree, an associate, bachelor, once you have that, you don't list high school anymore. High school goes away. It disappears completely from your LinkedIn, from your resume, from everything. Nothing from high school counts anymore. If, however, you don't have a degree yet and you want to include your high school, you can. And many students are in a transitional stage right now. It's maybe the first resume you've ever written. This is how we would do the high school. So Lubbock High School, Lubbock, Texas. Let's say you graduated in 2022. Again, we're going to have the dates aligned. What you earned was either a diploma, and if it is, you just italicize. And of course, bold the name of your school. Some students will have had an international baccalaureate degree. First of all, I hope you can spell that. But so you could put that down as international and you could do it that way. Okay. Most people will have diploma. And you might have like valedictorian, salutatorian, top 10. you could put that on there. You would just do comma, valedictorian, or top 10, graduated top 10. Sometimes it's 10%. Those don't have to be there, but they could be. Usually you would not include a high school GPA. If you were part of a dual degree program with a junior college, however, you did not finish the degree there, you did not stop and get the associate's degree, you just later transferred, to where you are now, then how you would do that is you'd put diploma, dual degree program, or dual credit program with Tarrant County College or wherever you went. And then you would get rid of this line because you did not get a degree there. So it is quite possible your education section will be this short, and that is perfectly okay. It is also possible that it will, is also possible that it will be longer, could be as long as this. But again, if you've stopped and got an associate's degree, high school should go away. All right, moving down, experience. If you have never held a job, every single time you submit any version of a resume, you need to put a note in Blackboard comments, not in this file, in Blackboard comments, or in, if we move to Canvas, Canvas comments, to let me know that you've never held a job. I'm not going to grade you on whether or not you've held a job. However, if you've never held a job, you do need to tell me, so I won't be looking for that on here and think the assignment is incomplete. As long as you've held a job, you always want to include the current one you're working at, and then you go backwards, 5 years or 5 jobs. Eventually, you will reach a point where you just want to include your experience that's relevant, and so you won't include all of your jobs. You'll, instead of calling it an experience section, you'll call it relevant experience, okay? So, you could also, depending on what you're doing, relevant experience would be if you have, 15 years of work experience, but you only want to include the stuff that's relevant to the position you're currently applying for. If you've never held a job, you might end up calling this a volunteer experience section. That if you've held a job and you volunteered, you may have two sections and you could include volunteer experience. It's not required, but you can. Sometimes we separate out internship experience. It depends on your field, on whether you would do that. And if you have a background in the military, you might have a section that says military experience. But there'll be some type of experience section on here in most cases. Now, what we want to do is we want to put the company name first. Okay, so what was the name of the company you worked for? I'm going to say it was UPS for me. So I might spell it out, United Parcel Service, and put UPS in parentheses. Then I would put where I was employed, so Dallas, Texas. I am not going to put the date on this line, and I'll explain that in a minute. We will bold the name of the company, just like we bolded the name of the school, okay? So we're bolding the name of organizations. Next, we're going to put the name of your position. What was your position title? And so when I quit UPS, I was a part-time supervisor. Pay attention to the capitalization here, okay? Both words are capitalized. I did not capitalize after the hyphen because you don't do that. Then we would tab over for the dates. So I'm going to tab over to put the date out. I'm going to italicize the name of the position to help it stand out, okay? Like I italicized the names of the degrees. You want to put your start date, month and year only. Do not put the day of the month. So let's say I worked there. Let's pretend I'm still working there. May of, we'll just say 2022 to present. Now I've accidentally italicized this, so I want to get rid of the italics. Need it to match throughout. Having document unity means that things match when they're in the same position and the same type of information. So I'm going to tab over again. That's too far. Then I'm going to start with the spaces, and I get the word present to align the T here with everything else. Notice I've capitalized the P in present, and I do not have any spaces on either side of that dash. Dashes and hyphens do not ever have spaces on either side of them. There's always no space, just so you know. Underneath each job, you must have a minimum of 2 bulleted responsibilities and a maximum of 7. So I'm going to tab over, and every bullet must start with a past tense action verb. No present tense, not even for a current job. So I'm going to go ahead and do the bullet. I'm going to put it in on the home ribbon. You just click the bulleted list tab. Notice the bullet's indented a little bit further. We want that. It helps, again, with readability and having things stand out. When I turn off those paragraph marks, we can see that all of the body text is aligned with the rest of the body text over here. All of my dates are aligned over here. Probably need to work with that just a little to get it into alignment with the rest of the text. There we go. Notice that I have consistent italics, I have a consistent font, I have consistent spacing, and I've skipped a space between each organization. You will do the same thing. So, as a part-time supervisor, I managed, and what you want to do is put in numbers as much as possible, but you don't always count every single thing you do. So I managed between 5 and 7 people. Uh, 7 employees as they sorted and loaded packages into air travel containers and trucks. In this case, I've started with a past tense verb. I have used numerals, which we want to use. I have shown that I'm detail-oriented by giving them a number. And now I have to make a decision at the end of my bullet. Okay, do I want to use punctuation? If you use punctuation on even one bullet in the entire document, you must use it on every bullet. So make a choice, either all or none. I don't care which. There isn't a specific rule for resumes on that. I tend to put the periods there just because grammar Nazis tend to like that. Okay, next we need a second bullet. We have to have at least 2. Again, has to start with a past tense action verb. If you have ever had somebody shadow you, follow you, you have trained someone. So trained, however, it might be just one person. You could say approximately if you're not sure. Trained approximately 87, I don't know, 80 people, employees on proper loading techniques. And safety. And we could leave it at that. No more than 7. And generally you want to put the bullets in the order that is most impressive to the person for the job that you are applying to. So if the job ad said you need a specific skill and this job gave you that skill, then that's going to be the first bullet. things like sorted stuff like that, managed paperwork. They kind of just expect you to be able to do that, so it doesn't usually show up unless we have nothing else to talk about. That's okay. Now, go back to a previous job and notice that I listed the education, most recent, and work backwards. Most recent and work backwards. So for a previous job, we would skip a space. I'm going to turn the paragraph marks back on. And we would have that company, whatever the previous company was. So let's say Best Buy. You're a salesperson at Best Buy. Okay. Um, Now, hopefully there wasn't a gap in employment. If there was, you don't have to explain it here. Okay. You explain it in the interview. You don't explain it on the resume. Again, we're going to bold the organization and we would put in the dates. So let's say, I don't know, May 2021 to May 2022 when I switched over to working for the other company, right? Space it out. Again, we put the title that we had, so salesperson. Oops, I should have put the date on this row. I screwed up. We will italicize sales, and there we go. Now you're probably wondering why I'm putting the date on this line instead of on the top line. It's because sometimes we get promoted. So let's say that I didn't start as a part-time supervisor at UPS. I started as a loader. It's the same job, so or the same company. So let's say I'm going to change the years up just to make it a little simpler for myself. Let's say before I was a part-time supervisor, I was a loader. What I would do is not skip a space because it's for the same company and I was promoted at that company. I would put in my previous position below and I'd put the years there so I could have it associated with the position. And so uh, loaded packages for delivery. Memorized zip codes. And routes for sorting packages. In this way, I can now turn off paragraph marks and you can see that this is United Parcel Service, this is part-time supervisor, this is the dates when I was that, these are the responsibilities for that, previous job at the same location or the same company, this position title, when I worked in that position, and what my job was there. Now, let's say that you were moved around. We'll do that down here on Best Buy. I have my thing sold computers. We don't want this bold. We don't want this italics. There we go. Make sure. Sold computers. Greeted approximately 120 customers per day. That's how we handle things like if you greeted somebody or you waited on, you could talk about roughly how many it was, and it would be approximately or an estimated. But let's say not only did I work in Lubbock, I also worked in Dallas. So I could say Lubbock, Texas, comma, Dallas, Texas. And if I had two sets of dates, I could put them there. Or perhaps maybe I was in Lubbock the whole time, but I worked for the company twice and did the same thing. Okay. I might put two sets of dates there. And so I might have, I don't know, December 2019 and, and I would move this back. That would be another way of doing it. Another way that you could say this would be seasonal work. Okay, so maybe you did just summers or something like that for a company. So you might have summers and you would have 2019 to 2021. Okay, you could do it that way, or it could say seasonal. So those are other ways that you could put in dates that often come up. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. Now, it's possible you've only ever held one job. It's possible we have a very short resume. It is perfectly okay if your resume only has this much information and that's what you turn in, okay? However, everything I see on your resume needs to be on your LinkedIn. You can have more on LinkedIn than you would on your resume. Your resume should not be more than 2 pages. If you can fit it on one page, that's great. If you get to a second page, it needs to be earned. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some of this stuff back in. Optional sections. These are things like certifications, um, honors, awards, scholarships. Most of the time, we no longer include hobbies. Now, if you had volunteer experience, if you had relevant experience, if you had military experience, you would format it the same way you did the work experience section. Certifications is kind of an education thing, so often we would move it up, and if you have certifications, like I said, optional section, we would move it up underneath education. That would be an appropriate place for it to go. Tab over, and then of course we would have to set it up to look like our heading. So we would choose the same color, we'd make it bold. It still stays size 12, but we change the font. Now, the word certifications pushes all of my text over. If we have that happen, then you've got to go back and you have to push all of the text. Okay? Now, another way of getting around that is just move it down a line. And you can still have the indent, but you don't have to have it on. Just make sure you're consistent on where you actually put your text. Okay? So it's consistent if it's all on the same line or it's not, if you have your headings separated out. Now, normally we wouldn't indent this far if you're going to separate and have your text, your body text underneath the heading. Normally we would move back and have it something more like half an inch indented instead of as far as we've gone. If you go this route, let's see. Okay, trying to do something fancy. Didn't work. I'm going to turn the paragraph marks back on. We can tab back over and then just go in. And so we would just end up get rid of one of the tabs to bring everything over. And then you'd have to add an extra tab to fix the date problem. And we would have to do this with everything throughout the entire document. Alignment matters all the way through. Now, if you decide to do this and you have to move the bullets, let me show you how to do that. You highlight the bullets. On the home ribbon, you look for where the bullets are turned on, but keep going to the right. You're looking for this increase indent and decrease indent. Choose the decrease, and we can bring it back, and you'll want it to go in just a little. And then make sure you grab the other bullets, because the bullets need to remain in alignment throughout the entire document. Don't forget to tab the dates back over. Okay. Now, certifications. Again, that body text would need to be set to normal. And you would just put the name of your certification, okay? So if it was CPR certification, you would put that there, and you would tab over to when you received the certification. So let's say it was June of 2024. Like everything else, it needs to go in reverse chronological order. That means most recent first. We would italicize the name of the certification. And again, remember, we will space over with the date. Now, if you only have one certification, then don't have it be plural. Get rid of the S. If you have more than one certification, keep the S. So maybe I had another certification in, I don't, okay, micro expression training tool. We'll say that I got this in August. And earlier. So that would be how we would do certifications. Honors and awards, same thing. Fix the fonts, bold. We only have one space between sections, so get rid of the extra paragraph mark. And you would do it the same way you did the certifications. You would just have whatever the name of the honor was. So it might be, Dean's List. Now, a lot of times for Dean's List, you'll have multiple years, okay? And so, or there's fall and spring, and so you might do fall, spring, and then the years. So, 2022 to 2024 so far. And this one might be 21 to 2024. So that would be how you would deal with that. Okay. Scholarships could fall under honors and awards, doesn't have to be its own section. You can separate out honors and awards too. Usually awards would come with some sort of financial thing or a plaque or something, whereas honors is usually just a named thing. But you could combine them all as one. It really just depends on how much you have there. Now, another option, and scholarships would look the same way, another section you might have would be organizations. And so organizations, we would go ahead and usually comes at the end. If you're only a member of one, again, make it singular instead of plural. You can do it a couple of ways here. So I'm going to go and set up all of the fonts and everything. Never forget that. We could put the name of the organization. So let's say it was the Society for Technical Writers. Sorry, Technical Communicators. STC. And most people start out as members, and so you would put whenever you joined. bold here. And let's say that you joined 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We'll call it September 2021 to present. Now you do want to